Nick Baldwin for BloodyElbow.com here with a former UFC fighter. He's a UFC legend. He's been in this sport since UFC 1, the very beginning. He's also a former UFC super fight champion and a former WWE superstar. He is the world's most dangerous man himself, Ken Shamrock. Ken, thank you very much for the time. We're here in Winnipeg. You're here for to promote your brand new comic book, Ken Shamrock's Rumble Sport, Roads to Ragnarok. Firstly, how are you? And also, how did you get involved with the comic book written by Greg Renton?
Actually, it's my business partner, Des Woodruff, was contacted by a representative that was interested in bringing us on board for the comic book. At first, Des heard about it. He's like, let me pass it on to Ken, see what he thinks. And said, we ain't really, we've got some stuff going on. It sounds interesting. And I said, why don't we just look at it? Let's see what they got. So they sent us a script. And I read the script, and I was like, okay, I like this. Because I kind of connected to it in a way where almost like the things that are going on in the world today. Almost like this fantasy way of venting and having these characters be able to go out and get revenge on different things that are going on. It's just so, to me, it's almost like an escape, a fantasy escape from the world, just for those moments that you're in the comic book, reading it and going and trying to connect with the characters and the storyline, that you're taken away from whatever's happening in the world around you at that moment. So I like the comic book. I like the direction it's going. It gives people something to read and be able to almost connect to.
What is your actual involvement in the comic? Are you just promoting it? Are you actually in it? What is your exact involvement?
Yeah, well, basically what we're doing is we're creating a storyline. I'm adding a personality to it. I mean, he wrote the scripts and everything, but what I'm doing is basically, just like with an actor, when someone writes a character for somebody, they don't know who's going to play the script, right? Or maybe they do, depending on what they're writing for. But really the guy comes in, whoever it is, and looks at the script and does what he thinks his personality or the character would do, put his personality and his spin on it. And so that's kind of what's happening right now. Once we've gotten into it and we're moving forward with it, the characters and my character as a godfather of these MMA fighters who have these superpowers. The world has come to an end. The superpowers are trying to take over. And so I'm kind of the guy that guides all these superheroes with superpowers, these MMA guys. I guide them with words of wisdom to go out and do the right thing and to help the people who are struggling through all these world power rules and things of that nature. So that's kind of what I've done now, is kind of put that personality on there, my character on there, the feeling of a godfather on this character. And so that's kind of where we're at right now, is we're just kind of trying to feel our way through and trying to get those characters down, my character down.
Now, just for the Central Canada Comic-Con that was this past weekend, they launched the Ground Zero edition. What is your responsibility moving forward? Because I know they're gonna, launch the first one, the second, and so on. Do you have to fly back out here? Can you just promote it from home? What is your responsibility moving forward?
Well, right now, I think my responsibility really is to get to know the character, make sure I know my role, and do a good job at being able to create the atmosphere and the direction that we want to go with these storylines. The second thing is, there's a big part that we still have to do right now in order to get it out there, get it in front of people. And so I think the biggest thing for me is to be able to attach this comic book to my fan base, attach this comic book to an MMA fan base, and attack it and really pretty much attack the media with the comic book. Get it out there, let them know it's out there, and saturate it in the market so people know it's there. Because once they get their hands on it, they start reading it and getting connected with the comic book, they're going to love it. So really that's basically what we got to do. We got to hit these comic cons. I know they got some in San Diego, there's in Dallas, there's all over the place. These comic cons are coming up, even internationally they go. So we want to try to make sure that we're connecting to all those comic cons, making sure that we're connecting with the right people out there for this comic book. So really I think my thing is just the face, the personality, and of course the celebrity I have to connect with the people and let them know that we are coming out with this book, that it's out and it's here.
Before Rumble Sport, were you big into comics, just maybe as a fan?
When I was a kid, I didn't really get a chance to read them, but I was always big into the comic movies. Because as a kid, I was in placement in juvenile hall. Never really had an opportunity. I didn't have enough money. I was an at-risk kid, so I didn't have the chance to read those comics. But as I got older and movies started coming out, they started making movies of these comic characters. That's when I got connected.
Awesome. And so let's move on. The last time you were scheduled to fight was March 2016. You were supposed to take on, of course, former opponent Dan Severn at your fight. That fight fell through. You pulled out with an injury, and Tank Abbott actually replaced you. That fell apart very quickly as well. After your fight won, I know they were planning on doing more shows. Since then, almost 2 years later, we've heard nothing about a potential your fight too. Had they contacted you afterwards saying, hey, do you want to be on our second show? Or did you just not hear anything afterwards?
Yeah, I haven't heard anything. I didn't pull out with an injury. And if you're talking about the last fight that me and Severn was supposed to have, I didn't realize he fought, Tank Abbott, but...
He didn't. He was supposed to.
Oh.
Abbott replaced you.
Yeah. Did he fight him?
No. Oh, Abbott did not pass his medicals.
Right. Well, that kind of tells you the situation that was in. Really, the situation was that I didn't get injured. I ended up testing positive for my last fight. And so... I was not able to participate in that event because I had been suspended for a year. Now, I was fighting it because I didn't do anything illegal. As they said, I tested positive, but there were certain circumstances to that did not stand up to what they were saying. So I was taking them to court. I was trying to plead my case. So I wasn't allowed to talk about anything. And so I told Severn, I said, when he attacked me about being chicken, backing out of the fight, I said, hey, I have a situation here that I can't talk about. I can't go on and try to explain it to anybody. I'm telling you through media that I can't fight, and it's not due to me being injured. It's due to something else, but I can't talk about it until after the court. And he continued to bash me. He continued to attack me, and I could not defend myself. And I thought that was a low blow, considering that I was the one that talked the organization into having Dan Severn because they didn't want to use him. They didn't think he could sell tickets. They thought he was flat. And I said, don't worry about it. I can sell the tickets. I can get the show going. We've had 2 fights. I've won 1. He's won 1. We can really build this thing up. And so they did it up on my request. Once that happened, obviously I wasn't able to do it. They were completely understandable when I talked to him. But Severn attacked me, and it just really made me angry. It was like, here I stuck my neck out for you. I got you the fight because I know you needed to make some money. And then you stabbed me in the back because he knew I couldn't talk about it.
And since that suspension, which ended in February of this year, correct?
Yeah, February, right.
And you said you were trying to lessen that or get rid of it. Did that just fall apart with the Texas Commission?
Well, like anything with the commission, you can bring all kinds of information in front of them and all kinds of proof in front of them, and they're just not going to do anything.
And so since that potential Severn fight in March of 2016, when was that the last time there's been any realm of possibility that you would fight again? When was the last time since your suspension ended, since you would be eligible to compete? Has there been anything come up since then where you considered fighting?
No, I'm 53. I got to go in and have my knee replaced, completely replaced. So, I've got some things I got to take care of. I'm not saying it's down the road. A fight comes up that's sensible, that I wouldn't do it. But right now, I've got to take care of some issues I have with my body, my knee for one. Got to make sure that's healthy. And then from there, I can evaluate where I go from now.
And how long will that take? I know knee replacements isn't exactly an easy thing to go through. It's a long process. Is there any sort of timetable for when you'd be healthy enough?
Well, I guess that depends on how quick I recover. Everybody's different. But last time I had ACL replacement, but isn't like what I'm going to have done next. I had ACL replacement. This is complete knee replacement, all of it. So I'm saying 6 months to 8 months would be a time where I think that I might be ready to go ahead and get back in the ring and fight. Whether I do or don't, I don't know yet, because I don't know what fights are out there. Sure. I know Dan Severn's dying for a fight. He keeps asking for a fight. But if it doesn't make sense, I won't do it. If I'm not going to fight him in a backyard. Sure. I'm not going to fight him in a B-rated organization. Sure. It's going to have to be something that makes sense. You know, we're not spring chickens anymore. If we're going to get in the ring and fight, it has to make sense.
Other than Severn, I think the Royce Gracie fourth fight is something you're still sort of wanting. Is there anything else that stands out as, okay, I'm going to risk, my health or take the fight? Is there anything you'd be willing to take other than Gracie or Severn? Is there any opponent that stands out?
Well, I think that, in my opinion, there was no Gracie 3 fight. It was pretty clear I got kneed in the nuts. It was a low blow. No question. Whether you think it did enough damage to make me hit the ground and not be able to continue to fight anymore is really irrelevant. It is whether it not. Was it low? And the question is yes, it was. So for me to award a guy a win on a foul is not right. So I don't look at it as a third fight. I look at it as a replacement fight. It should not have gone on as a win. It should have been disqualification or refight.
What is your current relationship with Bellator and its president, Scott Coker? Of course, your last 2 fights when you came back after the long layoff, your 2 fights were both for Bellator. Would that be probably the front runner as to who you would fight for if you do decide to come back?
Oh, I'm pretty sure that's who it would be for. But at this point in time, Bellator, I'm sure, is not interested. I know they've moved in a different direction. Don't know why, because they ain't getting the numbers that we're getting. So it doesn't make sense to me why they wouldn't do it unless it's Royce not wanting to fight, which that's what I believe. I believe Royce just doesn't want to fight again, and that's fine. That's okay. I mean, it's like when you get to a certain point and you say, hey, I'm at a certain age where I just don't believe I can get in there and train, or I don't have the desire to fight again. That's fine. I mean, I'm not going to pressure him. I'm not going to say, hey, you should fight me. All I'm saying is that he shouldn't get that win.
Did Bellator actually tell you that they're not interested?
No, they've never said anything like that, but I know that they haven't pursued it. We've definitely let them know that we put it out there that we would like to have that again. We believe that fight wasn't fair. We have the proof that it wasn't fair, that it was a foul, and the fight should not have been awarded a win. But whatever, it's done, it's done. But for the fans' sake, for MMA's sake, let's not leave a black mark on the history of MMA. Let's make sure we make that right. Let's get that one done again, and let's close a chapter on it.
I want to ask you briefly about Ryzen FF, which is a Japanese-based organization that kicked off in December 2015. So coming up to 2 years, do you look at that as a potential option for where you could fight, or is that not really even on your radar?
It's not. Right now I'm looking at pro wrestling. I'd like to get back into the WWF. I'd like to go in and get a shot at that title because that's the only thing that's ever eluded me. I've captured the world championship in everything I did. TNA, Pride, I did Super Fight for them. UFC, Pancrase. I've always risen to the top, and I've captured that title. I went into pro wrestling. I captured every title but the heavyweight title. So it's something that I definitely, since Kurt Angle's in there, I love to be able to put a match on with him, have an ankle lock match for the title.
So wrestling again, a lot more likely than fighting again.
Well, I don't know because there's been nobody contacting me about the WWF either. So it's just things that would be if I wanted to do something, if I had a desire to go do something, those are the ones I would want. I'd either want the Royce Gracie fight, get that done over again, or I'd want to go into the pro wrestling organization and get a run for that title again. Those are really the things that I'd like to close the chapter.
So I know you're a guy who did WWE, you did MMA, and you're one of the few guys who succeeded to both and just simply did both. Conor McGregor has become very quickly the biggest star in MMA. He's won 2 titles. He's fought Floyd Mayweather. He's crossed over to boxing. What are your thoughts on his chances of maybe going to WWE closer to the end of his MMA career? Do you look at that as something that actually could happen?
Well, wow. That's tough. He's a listen, guy's tremendous. Great athletic ability, but he's a lightweight, and there hasn't, other than guys that are high flying and have a lot of tremendous ability in their flexibility and movements and head scissors and all those fancy things they do in pro wrestling, which takes a long time to learn. Conor McGregor I believe, would have really a tough time trying to transfer over from the combat sport into the entertainment sport. And not to say he can't. I mean, like I said, it's possible for anybody, but just because he's a lighter weight, and he would have to have a whole lot of different types of moves in order for it to make sense for him to get in there and be able to wrestle the bigger guys. So he has all the submissions and all that stuff on the ground that he's really clever with, and even some of the other stuff that's high flying a little bit. But the psychology and this the way to put them all together, it's really hard. So until you see somebody go in there and actually do it and actually start having success with it, you're just not going to know. I believe that that's the hardest thing to do, is for one person to go from one sport to another sport and be successful. You look at Conor McGregor. He's one of the most successful MMA fighters out there right now, popularity-wise, right? And then you look at Floyd Mayweather, who is, record-wise, the best boxer ever to walk into a squared circle. They walk into a ring together. Conor McGregor's he's an at best average amateur. He gets a fight, a title fight, against Floyd Mayweather, who arguably, or is without an argument, the best fighter ever to walk into a squared circle. And Conor McGregor gets a title shot, not a title shot, but I mean, basically,
it was for the money belt,
right? Exactly. It had the money for a title, right? I mean, it's huge. The guy walks in there and does a fight with them, and he gets paid all that money, and he hasn't earned his way up the ranks. But because of his popularity, because of what he's done, he's able to just walk right in there and do it, right? He can't beat Floyd Mayweather, right? And anybody that has a trained eye knows that Floyd played with him. Floyd stood in front of him. He didn't move around. He got hit with 3 jabs by Conor. He got hit with an uppercut by Conor. And I think anybody with a trained eye understands that Floyd was dancing with him. And then when he wanted to finish him, he did, right? So that tells you how difficult it is for somebody to go from one sport to another sport, even though it's pretty similar when it comes to the fighting part of it. There's punching, there's elbows, there's all that stuff, so he can punch. But even though it's boxing and MMA, Conor couldn't keep up with him. Not even keep up with him in boxing. Do you imagine somebody trying to go from sporting event into an entertainment event and have to deal with all the psychology, putting matches together, learning how not to rip somebody's arm off, learning how not to really punch somebody, and go through all of that and setting up matches and making it make sense? There's a whole lot there. Cut a promo, which he already knows how to do. Really, really difficult to do. So if he was going to do something like that, he would have to, I think, at least take maybe a year and a half of training, and he can cut some promos, do some run-ins, protect him in that sense, without going out and having an actual match, and get him primed for it. I think he might have a chance. But just to walk right in the ring and just start doing matches, it would kill him. He wouldn't be the dominating thing that everybody's used to seeing.
And one last thing I want to touch on before I let you go, because I know you're on a time crunch, is your new podcast, the World's Most Dangerous Podcast, fitting name, of course. I think you're on episode 3 or 4. How has that been going? How did that all come together? And, podcasting is quite popular nowadays. Is that something you've wanted to do for a while?
Well, I know me and my business partner, Des Woodruff, were going to enter into podcasts, but it was like, we were kind of slow on it because it was like everybody was doing one. Like, how do we fit in? It's just like it's like muddy water, right? Sure. Where do we fit in? Are we just a part of the mud? And so we got to thinking, like, we've got a cool name, Dangerous Podcast, man. I mean, but if we got that name, then we have to be able to live up to it. Like, we got to live up to my personality. The world's most dangerous man. We got to get dangerous. We got to do things other people aren't willing to. So we talk about issues in the world, whether it's race, whether it's gender, women's lib, all these things that come up that we're not afraid to dive into, religion, all this stuff that we are not afraid to talk about. We're not afraid to go into. Also, we thought, what else could we do that would, be different, but would be exciting for people to want to listen to? And so when we first started talking about it, it was about the sense of, like, it was a business thing. Like, we wanted to bring in business into sport. We wanted to have sport and business tie together. And we thought at first we started talking about going over contracts and how the gates were making money and how the fighters making money and how much taxes was coming out of that purse, so that people really had an understanding about what it is the fighters were really making at the end of the day, bringing in those numbers and stuff, and how they were all getting paid and where all that money's coming from, merchandise, all these ways for them to make money, and be able to bring that business sense and that side into it to educate the fans. And so we thought about that. Once we got going on that, man, we started hitting other things. And I remember we started talking about the Shark Tank. And we said, wouldn't that be cool if we could actually do something like that on a podcast? And it was like the bell went off. Like, dude, that's it. It's like we could actually do our own show. Mixing business, mixing sport, mixing topics, important topics. He says, I don't think there's no podcast out there doing that. So we said, you know what? That's good. Let's kick it around. We started talking about it, how we wanted to do it. And we came up with the idea. We'll stick with the world's most dangerous man, the Dangerous Podcast. We said, let's stick with the Lions, like the Lion's Cage, where people can come in and pitch their ideas to us. And Des, being the entrepreneur, he would have the upper hand in being able to really look at some of these things and poke holes in it, and to see whether or not it would withstand, our poking. Would it fall apart? And so we thought, okay, that would be good. We'll call it Lion's Cage. We'll start getting some applications submitted, and then we'll start talking about it on the podcast. Well, once we did the first one, it almost felt like people just, immediately started sending us these creative ideas and stuff. We got a lot of good ones. We got one we're going to talk about on our next podcast if it hasn't come out already, but it's one that's really, really, really interesting. And so we start poking holes in that, and then there's some of them we just look at and go, yeah, well, there's just holes there we can help them with, but it's really a solid idea. So what we do is we evaluate whether or not this is something that's ready to go now, that's something we think that we may be able to help them get going. And then we'll say yay or nay. If we think we can help them get it going and get it launched, then we'll do it. If it's something that we think needs a lot more work and there's other things they need to get done before that, we'll say, hey, you need to go back to the drawing board and you need to fix this, and this, and then come back. So we don't just ixnay them and say, hey, you're out the door. We want to help everybody. But the idea of the podcast really came down to this. We had our website. We had all our social media stuff. And we just wanted to find another way to be able to stay connected to the fans, another way for us to intermingle with the fans, let them know what it is we're doing and all the stuff that's happening with Ken Shamrock. And so that was really the main idea when we went after the podcast, and all the other stuff when we started saying, well, if we're going to do it, we got to be different. All that other stuff came in after that.
Well, let everybody know where they can find it. iTunes, I'm sure it's on as well. Your social media plug, anything else, anything you got to plug?
Yeah, it's it's dangerouspodcast.com, and then there's Dangerous Pods on Twitter. Dangerouspodcast.com. If you click onto iTunes, you can go ahead and listen to Dangerous Podcast. But the most important thing is for you to leave your information, because we have giveaways. we give away things, but you got to leave us your information in order for us to give you something. So, but it's important to us that you also leave comments, because the idea for the podcast is to connect with the fans. The only way we can connect with the fans is if they leave us their ideas, their thoughts on the social issues that we're talking about, the business stuff that we're talking about. Let us know what you think, because it's important to Des and myself that we hear from you, because that's the idea of the podcast, is to stay connected to the fans.
Awesome, Ken. Thank you very much for the time. It's an absolute honor and a pleasure to talk to you, and good luck moving forward.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.